seen how beauty is viewed in different parts of the world. The standard of what is beautiful often creates a false idea at the expense of many more diverse views. But since the first international title was won in South Africa back in 1958, the country has won the Miss World title twice and Miss Universe title 3 times. To chat about why representation matters and the transformation of the Miss SA organization is the current Miss South Africa Sasha-Lee Olivier, and she'll be unpacking that with us this morning. Sasha, good morning. Thank you for joining us bright and early.
A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Sasha, during these unprecedented times, arguably, your reign must have been affected somewhat. Let's delve into what your reign has been, as COVID-19 hit the country the world over, and perhaps how you've managed to adapt during these times.
So I was just crowned in mid-January, and as the time obviously went by, it called for our platform to be online and for more on action to be handled digitally. And I think, like the vast majority of South Africa, this moment has called for true leadership, one not about recognition, but the responsibility to serve, and for at home, and to try to flatten the curve as much as we possibly could.
I'm looking at the evolution of pageants, the world over. Just perhaps before we get back to how it's going to change in South Africa, we've seen this year, or last year in fact, Miss World, Miss Universe, Miss South Africa. I'm trying to think, everyone, was of black origin. It was non-white, basically. So we're looking at the evolution of beauty, the evolution of beauty standards, and how that's translated over the years. What is your take on that evolution?
I've always been of the notion that no one had the right to define what beauty is.
Yeah.
Previously, we've seen this, it was this preconceived concept that was created by a subjective society.
Yeah.
It was aspirational as opposed to being relational. When I was younger, I never really saw someone like me participate in a Miss South Africa pageant, let alone take the actual title. So we've definitely assisted in broadening the definition of what it means to be beautiful, not only in terms of looks, but in terms of what it is that we put out into the world. And I think it's about time. It's about time that there is inclusion. It's about time that everyone is equally represented, so that people could see their faces reflected in ours. And in doing that, it's a future reimagined for so many kids and women and men alike.
And Sasha, speaking of which, the Miss South Africa pageant's also undergoing transformation. It's going to become even more inclusive and more diverse. So what can we expect this time around? Also factoring in the fact that we don't know how long the COVID-19 pandemic is going to impact us. What will this mean for the incoming Miss South Africa?
I think the focus is definitely going to be more on the digital side of things. And in doing so, I think it definitely broadens the community at large. I think there's a lot of people who look to the things that we say. Zozibini Tunzi, for example, has been one of the most quoted women that we have with regards to taking up space, with regards to gender-based violence and her views on that. So I think at large, we need to look at how the digital community impacts the world at large, and we could definitely see how this would help society to have those conversations they've been neglecting to have for the longest time. With regards to the pillars that Miss South Africa has now, beauty, championship, and empowerment, I can definitely see how this is going to help the upcoming Miss South Africa and also South Africans at large, because Miss South Africa is very much about the ripple effect. It's not only about assuming these positions, it's about leadership without the title. It's about inspiring the rest of South Africa to do their part, as we've seen they've been doing as of late.
So, Sasha, trying to mitigate against some of the challenges that COVID-19 has posed, how is the process going to move forward, as we sift through some of the contestants who are applying? What will that process look like?
You know, I've seen a lot of entries being put forward online. Everyone is allowed to actually put forward their entry on their Instagram and the rest of their social media platforms. So it's definitely going to be very much online in terms of how the rest of the pageant is going to unfold. I think our CEO can have a chat to you about that. I don't really know all of the ins and outs as yet, but I'm very excited to see what exactly unfolds in the future. We see a lot of businesses having to adapt and seeing how flexible they are. And as an entrepreneur, it's great to see how we've adapted now with regards to COVID-19, and definitely excited to see how we take this on in the future.
Yes, I agree. It always poses, both opportunity and challenges, and it seems that you as the organization are working to your best of your ability. But I mean, there are always challenges that also, permeate through. I want to know to date, what are some of the biggest challenges about stereotypes and misconceptions regarding beauty and pageantry that continue to infiltrate, the world over? How can these be dispelled?
Sorry, you were breaking up there. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I was just asking about some of the challenges that continue to cloud pageantry and beauty at large. We're looking at some of the stereotypes and the misconceptions. How would you like to dispel some of those today?
I think, for the vast majority of it, everyone looks at the aesthetic and they see that as what beauty is. I mean, we as people are multifaceted beings with a multitude of strengths, and in that, so much more that we could bring to these platforms. Miss South Africa is not solely about beauty. It's about championship. It's about being a voice for a multitude of causes. It's about empowerment, not only in terms of what it is that we're exposed to, but how in turn that expands on our worldview. And we've seen that as a woman is empowered, so is her community. So it's all of those things. It's not just a beauty pageant. Miss South Africa, I've never really viewed it as that. I viewed it previously as an instrument of change that was instrumental in alleviating various socio-economic issues that the country was facing. And I now see it through being Miss South Africa as the empowerment platform that is, because I've grown so much. And I think that's what it's about.
And then, Sasha, just in conclusion, you were speaking about perceptions earlier, and you spoke about how it's going to become more inclusive and diverse. I want to know how we move away from a more Eurocentric approach and, begin to embrace more of the cultural elements from all parts of the world, and how that can perhaps be reflected more in a South African context than the world over.
I think we've seen that in last year, that Miss South Africa was very much an accurate representation, not only of demographic, but of culture and the different types of women that were included within the space. At first, it wasn't something that was taken very easily by the general public. And the reason for that, I think, is because it was different. And that is actually how it is supposed to be. I think that you can't really put women within this pre-assumed template. I think it's very much unfair, and I don't think the vast majority of us fit that template. And with regards to how it can be more inclusive going forward, it very much has to do what it did last year with allowing people like us that didn't fit within this pre-assumed template to take part and to be the focus, not solely on beauty, but on the other things that we could bring forward, not only to the pageant, but to South Africa and the global and everything within the global context as well.
Sasha, we've run out of time. I want to know, during your tenure, how would you like to be remembered?
A legacy is something that's so far-reaching and meaningful. You can't really quantify it. It's evident in every single life that you touch. But all I want to do is be remembered for the idea that your darkest moments can indeed birth the lightest and the brightest.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sasha-Lee Olivier, Miss South Africa, just chatting to us about the evolution of beauty pageants the world over, and perhaps ways that the Miss South Africa organization will continue to include representatives from all facets of society.